the point in all of this, as you can tell, between fucking shoes and houses and tequila and tithing, that's a fun podcast, tequila and tithing. So like all of this is occurring. We have learned how, at some level, to just submit to the other person's insanity and actually accept it as part of the equation. All right, here we go. Welcome to this week's Date Your Wife podcast. My name is Garrett J. White. I am your co-host here in this amazing podcasting program. Ho. Speaking of which, Isla says that about her Christmas jammies. Ho, ho, ho. Ho, ho, ho. This is what she asked for. She asked for the ho, ho, ho jammies. So like, she wants to wear the Christmas jammies, which I let her wear the Christmas jammies, including the elf jammies last night because... I always know when you put her to bed because I'm like, why is she in like too small of Christmas jammies? No, they're not too small. They are right size. They're going to be too small in the next 2 months.
Yeah, I know. And then I'm like, is laundry need to be done? What's going on? But
nope, doesn't need to be done. She just asked for the Christmas jammies. She says, Daddy, I want a ho-ho-hos.
She was so cute this morning. I took her, so I built out this like gym in our house and I bought a Smith machine, which apparently Parker thinks she can't do.
Apparently my son thinks that you can't work out on a Smith machine.
Dude, I bought a Smith machine just to grow my glutes. Anyways, Isla comes downstairs. She's working out with us. She has like my booty band and she's putting it on her head. So I finally show her how to put it on and she was so cute. She was like legit doing like these air squats with the booty band on. I was like, oh yeah, like it was cute.
Bill, she's probably the best nutrition of any of our children has been given to that child.
She's a sturdy kid.
She eats chicken, fish, rice, broccoli, asparagus, chocolate milk.
What's so funny? I used to never cook, and then when I started training for my bikini competition last year, it's not that I started cooking, I just started grilling a lot. Like, you have to eat so much protein, and then you always put it with, like, a carbohydrate, usually, like, rice or a sweet potato or pretty much rice. I eat so much rice. And I just started, Garrett thinks I'm, like, the best cook ever, and all I did is I literally buy turkey meat, I buy chicken, and I buy tilapia. I buy 3 things of meat, but I change it up. Sometimes I'm like, do you guys want burrito bowls? I'm like, do you want fish and asparagus?
Do you want it with rice? Do you want it with tortillas?
Yeah, I'm like, I have like, so I feel like if you prepare one protein, but then you have like multiple carbs and multiple veggies, it's like a smorgasbord.
It is a smorgasbord.
But I feel like what would happen is like we would both like work, or I'd just be tired and I'd feed my kids like mac and cheese or top ramen or quesadilla, and then I would just like nibble on whatever they were eating, and then Garrett would come home. And he'd be like, what's for dinner? And I'm like, I had like half a bowl of mac and cheese. And then you would end up like microwaving, like I'd buy lean cuisines all the time, which now sounds so gross.
Disgusting now.
But I just was like, I just didn't care.
I would eat 3 of them.
He would eat like, all these lean cuisines. But now.
It was bad. It was like, how many calories in these? I would eat 1. I'm like, I ate a lean cuisine. I'm fucking starving. You're like, well, because that's 200 calories. Like, fine, then I'll eat 3.
I know.
So I'd like microwave. And it was, it wasn't the best. It wasn't the best.
You know what's so funny? Like, I feel like we actually spend more money on food with how much food I'm making. I swear I go to the grocery store like I order the groceries like 3 times a week.
We eat a lot of real food, and we have a growing son who is into getting muscle, so he eats shitloads of food too.
Like he's got his own place, and then one day he comes over and he's like got all these groceries, and he's got like he just got a bunch of like stuff, and he starts like cooking it, and I was like, dude, you can eat our food, I don't care. And I didn't realize how much he eats. I was like, woo! I was like, I gotta go to the grocery store like 3 times a week.
Yeah,
like
we go through some serious chicken, serious rice, serious you know what though, I remember being the same way with my parents. I just didn't have like nice chicken.
Well, like I only had 3 girls, and all of a sudden I had like a grown man child in my house, and I was like, and I swear he eats more than you do.
Of course he does. He's in the gains. Yeah, he's trying to put on the big muscles. I'm like just trying to stay lean and mean and sexy surfing.
I have been trying to put on the gains, and it's hard. It's hard to do. I want to do another show in June.
All right.
And it's hard as a girl because like there's something about, and I was telling you, we were talking about this the other day. You're like, I think you look better fuller, and I'm like, I think I look better fuller too. But
you look good full.
But there's something about like just having a 6-pack that you just feel like powerful. You're just like, I'm so depleted.
Now you've been smitten and bitten by the fitness show. So we talked about the fitness show last week. We talked about sex last week. We don't have to talk about sex this week. We can talk about some different topics. Let's talk about, unless you want to talk about sex, we talk about that again. Okay, good. So let's talk about something different. I have a different topic for us to discuss tonight.
What is
which is, we're going to talk about the surprise attack with tithing.
Okay. That's what we're going to talk about? The whole show?
No, it's a principle of relationships.
Okay.
Which is this. Okay, so here's how it goes. My wife has a certain way of operating. This way of operating, you might say, well, how's your wife operate? I was like, well, I'll tell you how she operates. Here's the deal. My wife absolutely has zero problems.
Be rude? Is this going to be a rude
No. Why are you
podcast?
assuming? That's a horrible
Because
pre-frame.
you always...
That's a horrible pre-frame. Why would you put yourself up to feel that way?
Not always, but a lot
doesn't have
of
to be negative.
times. But a lot of
I
times...
like how you course corrected on that.
A lot of times, like yesterday, you're like, you need to get in the trenches with your work. You need to stop delegating. You don't do this and this and this. And I'm like, last time I checked, like my business did really good based off of me delegating last year. So no, like I still want to be a wife and a mom. So like I
agree.
I hear you. So tell me, you're not going to be mean. Frame it up, please, a little bit sweeter.
Okay. So anyway, Danielle has a way of we deal with money differently, her and I, right? And I believe that every man, every woman has a way of dealing with money. They deal with money, and everyone is a selective cheap bastard about certain things and also a complete idiot in how they spend money in others. Meaning there's no limits to the amount of money they will spend in one area, while at the same time they completely want to restrict in the other area. And it is not often that you have two people who are on the same page with this. So in our relationship, we have had a dilemma over the years, which is I did not see the value in purses and shoes.
It's not even about purses and shoes.
See, here we go. Give us a story. See, to me, all it was purses and shoes. Right now,
what bugs me is when you choose to make large investments without
in bags and shoes.
No,
that's a large investment if you add up all 700 of them.
I'll give you an example. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to buy some new furniture for our house we just got, and you're like, no, babe, we cannot. We definitely are not doing that. And I was like, really? It's really important to me. Like, we bought the house furnished, but I just want to like redo the front area so it feels like my home. Like, really? We can't do that? And you're like, absolutely not. And then the next week, you're like, by the way, I bought my parents a home. I'm like, I'm like,
well, I bought you a home too. I mean, we bought a home. And then I bought my parents home.
I need you to understand when you tell me that, but then you're like, by the way, and I'm like, I'm not even saying you can't buy your parents home. Like, but you can't surprise tag me and be like, by the way. I'm like, this is a wee house. This is a wee house.
Is that how I do it? By the way.
No, that's how I imagine this would go down.
By the way.
By the way. That's how I hear it.
All right, keep going.
Usually it's like casually.
I'm like, hey, just so you know, I bought a home from my parents. All right, so what do you want for dinner? Is that how it goes?
You literally like drinking, sipping on a beer, and you're like, "There's no good way to do this." By the way, like that's.
By the way, bought my parents a house.
By the way, that's.
What do you mean
not
you bought
a
your parents'
good
house?
way
Yeah, by the way, just bought my
to-
parents' house.
But here's what I'm saying is like you made this big deal about our new house and being like, I'm a producer and this is a wee house, and I love that you love to like brag, like not brag, but I love that you love to support that, and you're like, that's so awesome, and it is a wee house, and it's great. But I get really frustrated when we don't make big we decisions and it casually comes up over dinner with a fucking IPA. I'm like, I want to we. I'm gonna like, where. So keep telling me about.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna keep telling you about it because that was one. I wasn't planning on that one. So we had another one. So we were raised in Mormon culture, and if you're raised in any kind of orthodoxy religiously in at least a Christian world, tithing is something that is brought up, which is the idea of giving 10% of your net income or your profitable income to the church or to God or however that looks. So we did that for a long time. And then we left the church in 2009. We didn't go to any church, and Danielle and I got on our own path with how we look at tithing. Now, I take on a few things. For example, if we are in a city and a homeless man is walking by, or we are in not a different city, we're at the Target and a family standing there playing a violin and they're asking for money, right? I am helpless against this. I want to give them money. But I don't want to give them $5. I want to give them $300. So I give them dollars, hundreds of dollars. I just hand it off. And I'm not saying that to brag. It's just something I teach my kids. We stop. They've learned this. Danielle, on the other hand, doesn't like this.
No,
you don't like this.
This is what bugs me.
This is time to live by the code, but you don't like this.
This is what bugs me. I'm going to live by the code.
Okay, live by the code.
Right
Give
now.
it to us right now.
So I don't have a problem doing that, but what bugs me is like I'll go get cash, and I might like have a couple $100 cash. And then I'm like, okay, you're like, babe, give me some cash. I'm like, cool, I'll give you like $20. You're like, no, I want all of that cash. I'm like, fuck you, get your own cash. And you're like, and then like in front of our kids, you're like, you don't want to give to these people. I'm like, I really got this cash for a reason.
Do you have a problem giving?
I don't, but here's how I give. So for me, and this is an example since you just threw me under the bus.
I don't throw you under the bus.
So
I'm simply pointing out a situation.
We go to Cancun, and there's this couple there, and they're like, hey, they do photos, and they're like, hey, you know, if you take photos with us, you don't have to pay anything. You just buy the photos you like. And I'm like, cool. Like, I love photos. I'd love to do that. So I set up a time. I cancel them like 3 times. I mean, these guys are hustlers. They're like texting. They're like, we'd love to do this. We finally set up a shoot. We do the shoot there, and I'm like thinking like they're probably like, I don't know if they're gonna be that good. Like, then I go to get them. I'm like, these are really good. And then they're like, let me show you our packages, and it's like $2,500, $2,000, like $1,800. I was like, whoa, smart marketing. Like, you know, I was like, okay. And then I was like, God, I'm not going to spend that much on photos, but good fucking hustle. And I was like, I spent $900 on photos. So the kicker is, Garrett's going down to take our luggage out. And I'm like, babe, can you stop by and pay the photo people? I don't have a card with me when I went and like looked at all the photos.
No, they came and found me.
Good for them.
They came hunting me down with it, and they said, Mr. White, we're here to check your wife out with their photos.
There was probably only like maybe 10 photos that I was like, I love those, but I was like, I really appreciate your guys' hustle, so I bought like an $800 package. And I was telling Garrett, I was like, to me, like I like giving back more in that sense. Like when I feel like somebody has, I don't know, like for me, that's very, it's more fulfilling. I'm like, good hustle, like good job. Like I would rather support a business in that aspect. And it's not to say that I wouldn't give, like it's not that I wouldn't give to homeless people. It's just there was this period of time where you like made me feel like I was guilty, or I felt guilty because I felt like you made me look like an asshole in front of our girls because I was like, this is my cash. Get your own cash.
Are you against homeless people?
It's kind of. There's a few people that drive me nuts.
Are you against the white bearded guy by the gas station?
Yes, because he just stares at me like, why don't you want to give me your money? And I'm like, because this is a full-time job for you. And then I have to be like, Danielle, you don't know his story, but I don't like his energy. Like, I'm like, because like I'll drive by if there's like, I'm a sucker for a mom with kids. Like if she's.
Have you pulled over to the road with a mom with kids?
If there's a mom with kids and I have cash, I'm like, here you go.
If you don't have cash, we go to the ATM and get cash?
I will not. I have a lot to do.
All right. So we have different ways of dealing with this situation, right? I am very free flowing with it. And I do the same business strategy, which means we've kind of had our own creative way. Both of us are paying tithing for the past like 12 years. We do it our own way, So we go to this in church called Ocean's Church. And this is out of nowhere. We decided to go. We were feeling total like vibey there. It's amazing. We're loving it. Pastor Mark and Rochelle, we haven't been to any church for like 12 years. And we've gone to some church here and there, but nothing that was like, oh, that was awesome. We want to go back. We really want to go back. So I'm sitting there in the front row at the church and the first week, and I feel that, they give a chance for offerings. You can do it cool now from your cell phone, text message, etc., which is different than back in the day. And so like, okay, and I send a text and I say I'm going to contribute $500, but then I never complete the information. The next week we go back and I say I'm going to do $1,000, and then I don't complete the information. And then I go back a third week and this voice inside of me sitting in the church says, give him $5,000. And I send in the text, but again, I don't complete it. Then we go to Cancun, and we're in Cancun. We're having a good time. We're paying tithing to the picture people, as Danielle just mentioned. And we come back from Cancun and go to the church again. I'm sitting there in the church, and I get this message. It's like, okay, $5,000 a week. And I don't want you to get tied up in the dollar amounts or what's happening with it. And I'm like, what the? So then I send the text, and of course I don't do it. So I'm sitting there, and I'm super frustrated, sitting in a stacking moment, which is one of the tools that we use inside the Warriors Way to deal with our thoughts and energy and process that. And I'm sitting in this voice inside that had been prompting me throughout all of this, said simply, hey, you didn't listen to me at 500. You didn't listen to me at 1,000. You didn't listen to me at 5,000. You're not listening to me at 5,000 a week. How much further do I have to go? I was like, oh, shit. So I get on, take my card, pay the 5,000, set up for recurring billing every week. Now, again, don't be toggled up in the money and the amounts. I'm sharing this with you just to be very transparent with you. Now, I don't tell Danielle about any of this. Right? So I'm having this moment. Now, here's where a challenge and where a dilemma comes in as a couple, right? Because a part of me has an already listening, and you as a couple already have an already listening about the person you're married to, which means you kind of have a good inclination that if you say A, B, and C and ask for permission, it will be a guaranteed hell no. So you find it actually easier to ask for forgiveness than
That is incorrect.
Permission.
That is incorrect because even after you initially told me, you're like, hey, I put this much towards tithing. I was like, a part of me is like, well, I can't say anything because it's tithing. Like, it's a church thing, and I really like this church too. But then I was like, I was more irritated the fact I was.
You were pissed though. Yeah, I don't know if you're pissed about tithing. You were just pissed. Tell me about the pissed off.
I was pissed because, like I said, literally 2 weeks before that, you're like, I bought my parents a house. While at the same time, we're on vacation in a timeshare that my parents, we didn't even have to pay to be there, and you're bitching about money being spent on a vacation in which we didn't have to pay for the timeshare. And
I didn't bitch about the vacation.
Yes, you did.
No,
and I was like,
I bitched about $1,000 in tequila that we bought.
That wasn't my fucking fault.
Hey, you pulled a little shenanigan. You stood and looked at me and you said, "Hey, tough guy, you're gonna get this tequila." And I was like,
"Oh bullshit! You're such a liar."
Put me in front of like all the hustlers having to show my true hustler status.
We go on a boat, and then the guy's like, "Do you want to do the tequila tasting?" He's like, "Well, careful, there's sharks." And I was like, "Absolutely, I want to do the tequila tasting."
I thought he meant real sharks. I was like, "They got fucking sharks over by the tequila. How do they pull that off?"
I wasn't. I was relatively more sober than you and your 21-year-old son. You guys have been drinking on the boat.
Much.
So anyways, I'm like just like sipping and actually tasting because I enjoy tequila. And I'm like, oh, that's a really nice bottle. I like the smoky flavor. I'm like, sure, we'll do one of those. And then Parker's like, and then you come in, you're like, we'll do that one and that one and that one. And I knew, I'm like, these are like expensive. And then they just marked them up so much.
This was like club status in Vegas on New Year's.
This is so...
Bottle service.
So typical Garrett, and I'm sorry to throw you under the bus, but I just...
Are you sorry?
I'm not.
Okay, so don't apologize. Continue with the beat down.
What happens is all of a sudden we go to pay, and you're in, and the guy goes, it'll be, what do you say, like $900 or something.
Like 900, no.
He almost wanted $1,000 for 3 bottles of tequila. And I go, we're not paying for that. I'm like, get rid of that bottle and that bottle. And then the guy goes, I'll give you this gross banana flavor one.
Which who knows if Parker's even drinking.
I don't know. And he's like, we'll give you the banana one for free. And Garrett goes, perfect, we'll take those two. And it still was like $600. And then I almost felt like
it was still $900.
I felt like I was insulting your manhood because I was like, hell no, we're not paying for all those. No, like you're gonna get like, and then you were like, perfect, we'll take. And it's almost like, I don't know if it's like a macho thing where you're like, I can't pay that and I will, but then I reap the lash that night of you being like, kind of like, oh, like, I can't believe we paid that. And I'm like, I didn't tell you to pay that. And I get fucking dickhead Garrett, and you show up and you project your feelings of being pissed that you bought that, but then in the moment you wanted to pound your chest and say, yes, I can pay for this, and I'm like, I'm gonna have a margarita and come on to you and see if this changes your attitude.
You know what? And you know what?
Works.
We had great sex, and then I still didn't change my attitude.
Yeah, but then
you know what the problem was during Cancun? The problem with Cancun was I didn't do like 90% of my routine. I didn't take my supplements to make me less crazy. I didn't drink my greens as much. I didn't do my workouts. I didn't do I went in surfing. I didn't my whole week was kind of fucked up. So, I didn't do as well. So, by the time we got to the end of 8 days, which was the longest vacation I'd ever been on in my life.
It was 6?
It was 7 nights and 8 days. Do your math.
6 nights.
Easy here, Pottery Barn class in college. Listen.
Are you being rude to me again?
No, I'm just talking about you and Jocelyn trying to carry your pottery into class that you drop and break.
That was such a dickhead, like, okay, Pottery Barn.
You failed Math 10 in college, yes or no?
I'm going to remind you of how much I made last year.
Yeah, well, good thing we don't need math to make money. Good job. All right, listen. So the point in all of this, as you can tell, between fucking shoes and houses and tequila and tithing, that's a fun podcast, tequila and tithing. So all of this is occurring. We have learned how, at some level, to just submit to the other person's insanity and actually accept it as part of the equation. So with me and with Danielle inside of our marriage, I came to terms with the fact she really likes the shoes and the purses. Now, I am still, it's probably better for her to purchase them away from me and just come home with them. And because, I just, for whatever reason, I just have there's a piece of me that's but if you ask me to buy 5 new iMacs for the office, I'm like, whatever. Done.
Literally, I have to be careful about unboxing something. You'd be like, oh, did you get some new shoes? I'm like, I sure did.
Well, and then you get offended when I ask you a question. I'm like, when is the last time you wore these shoes? And you're like, why are you judging my shoe closet?
Why do you gotta say it exactly?
Well, I'm just asking a simple question.
Take your judgy shoe feeling somewhere else.
I'm like, have you ever worn this bag? If you look at this dress, it has a tag on it. These shoes right here, have you ever worn these shoes? They look brand new.
I'm like, no, but guess who bought them? You did.
Well, good. And you kicked me out of the entire closet, by the way.
I know.
We moved into a new house, and I have I'm in a small closet on the side.
You know what, though? But here's the thing. Like, I would never make a large investment without coming to you first. And I think
what is a large investment?
That's a loose question.
Well, because you went and made some investments and didn't tell me.
No, I did tell you. I bought a gym.
After the fact.
No, I didn't.
No, not that.
What did
you
I
went and
invest?
bought us rings?
Oh, well, yeah.
I mean, that was really cool, but you went and spent a significant amount of money on the rings.
Significant amount. But
and then you didn't talk to me about that. You just did it.
I didn't just do it. I told you.
No, you didn't tell me.
No, I told you when they were getting made, and I was like,
you just didn't tell me how much they cost.
I told Jeff to take it out of my Isla account, and my Isla account wasn't even, it was like a secret savings account because it meant a lot to me. So I did not
So you had a good justifiable
to ask you for that decision.
Well, I had brought the money from my parents' house out of a secret Warrior Wealth account with my insurance company. So there you go.
Just going nowhere.
All right, so here's the thing though. We have learned, and like there is a piece inside of marriage when you get across the 5 stages. We talk about this at divorceyourwife.com. You can check out the entire video there. These 5 stages of relationships: seduction, strangulation, suffocation, and then you hit the gap and you got to make a decision. The decision is, will you submit to the fact that your marriage itself, you are married to a person who is both beautiful and a bitch, who is both amazing and an asshole? Can you submit to the fact that in your relationship you are married to a person who is both extremes of these? Which means they're doing things and going to be things that are completely different than you, right? According to the astrology charts, you and I are what we call an anomaly.
I actually think we pair really well together.
An enigma.
Well, they just say I'm a Taurus, he's a Gemini, and like
a purple unicorn.
When you like, I'm always like looking at random stuff like that. And it's like the least compatible, Gemini and Taurus. I'm like, oh, and then, but then I've also read it's like, but in a rare occasion, the stars and the moon align.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we're an enigma.
I was actually telling my trainer,
anomaly.
I was like, I actually think when Garrett and I are on fire, and like we pair very, very well together. Like
when we're conscious,
when we're when we come together, like it's a pretty cool force. Like in our personal lives, in the people in our businesses, like we come together and people are like, whoa. But I mean,
there's some war to get there. Like a lot of war.
There's some war to get there.
That's where submission in stage 4 came in. It was submission.
But I think that we're both strong personalities, and that's what I was getting back to. Like, I think we pair well together in the sense of like, I'm like, hey, I can be very masculine, but I'm also very feminine, and I also appreciate a man who shows up very masculine. Like that's a turn on to me, right?
Yep.
So if I expect a man to show up as a man and be masculine, then I have to show up as a woman and let him be the man. Like,
did you hear that, ladies?
Like, no, I'm just like,
no, you're saying it how it is, ladies. You hear that? Listen up.
I'm just going to say.
Listen up, ladies.
Stop. The only reason I'm bringing this up is because I was talking to my trainer this morning. I love her to death. She's like newly dating this guy. And anyways, she's like, oh, he's so great. But he let me buy dinner last night. And I was like, oh, that's such a turn off. She goes, yeah. And she goes, but, and then she goes, I think it might have been my fault. I had a cocktail and I was like, let me pay. I'm like, you showed up as the man. She's like, and I was like, I'm like, you're very giving, but you kind of went, so he was like, maybe she wants to pay for me. Okay, great. Like I can accept that. I'm like, but you can't expect a man to show up as a man if you're not gonna show up and be the woman. I'm like, and even if he feels uncomfortable, you have to give him the opportunity to pay for dinner. Like even if he doesn't have a lot of money, even if he doesn't think there's an extra date in there, like you have to let him have that opportunity to show up how you want him to show up. And so that's like one thing I realized like in our relationship is because I'm a strong personality, if I want my man to be, because it's very sexy, there's a lot of chemistry when you are playing that role, and I'm sure vice versa when I'm kind of submissive and I can be the wife. And so that's why I think we go really well together, is we've kind of like figured that out.
That's a piece of submission, stage 4. Submitting. No, seriously, it is. It's submitting to roles. It's submitting to playing your piece on the team. It's submitting to letting go. It's submitting to a whole bunch of things. Like, for example, my wife does not do well with the fact that there are required financial commitments to be able to make things happen in life when it comes to shit she doesn't care about. And so we just had to talk about this recently. We have repairs having to be done on one of our other houses, and she doesn't like the fact that some repairs had to be done, and so she wants to figure out how we can buy a roll of duct tape from Home Depot and just fix it. And I'm like, it's not going to work like that for $12. Meanwhile, in handbags filled with Louis Vuittons and Chanel bags.
My brain is always like thinking, like, okay, like bags are expensive, but they're not like, and shoes are expensive, but I'm like, ooh, they're not like, yeah, over time they might be like 50 grand. But then when you're like, we got to put 50 grand in this, I'm like, but do we have to do it right now? Like larger numbers, I'm like, but do we, is it absolutely necessary right now?
So I asked you, because it is, and I asked you, I was like, do you want me to just not tell you? And you were like, yeah. And I was like, okay, I will just handle it.
No, I didn't say just don't.
You did. You said, don't tell me. I know, because this was dealing. I said, do you want me to just keep you out of these conversations? I'll just handle it. And you said yes.
Out of some conversations.
Okay, I'll keep you in as many conversations you want to be in. But this submission piece in conversation, money is a topic.
I think that framed correctly, I would appreciate you actually filling me in on these things. But and sometimes you frame it up well, like even with the whole church tithing thing. Initially, I was like pissed off, and then
that was bad pre-frame.
But then you explained it, and I was like, you know what, that's great. I've been kind of feeling the same way. Like, we'll see where this goes. That's great. And I'm like, had you have came to me and you said it that way and you framed it up that way, I wouldn't have been triggered and gotten mad in the first place. And so that I think there's always a conflict or an argument that can be avoided based on how you present that idea to your significant other.
Oh, see, this is good, right? The pre-frame seduction, right? Being able to present.
You can't just go straight for the boobs, Garrett. You gotta
you just walk straight in. Boobies.
You gotta treat every conversation like you're trying to
I'm trying to get laid.
You're trying to get laid.
And I did not pre-frame those situations really well. So that's the end of our message for today, which is simply this.
Frame a conversation like you want to get laid.
Oh, wow. I like where you went with that. That's the name of this show. Frame the conversation. Tequila, tithing, and framing money like you want to get laid. So this framing idea, though, and submission, I really want, this is going to be our challenge for the week, which is you going to be taking on there is a conversation that you're avoiding right now in your relationship, and it could be around money, it could be around sex, it could be around parenting, it could be around kids, it could be around whatever the fuck it's about. But whatever it's about, you're going to specifically look at how can I pre-frame this in a way that would allow for us to have a rational conversation. Now, I did not do this with the tithing. And the tequila thing didn't go down so well. But we have had a lot of great conversations that are working really well. And those we're kind of throwing ourselves under the bus and giving some examples of stuff recently in the last month. Yes, we were fallible. Yes, we fuck a lot of things up. But the cool thing is we keep winning. And we keep winning for one simple reason, because we keep submitting. We keep submitting to grow, to be better better today than we were yesterday, be better tomorrow than we will be today, and just continue this game of progress.
I think, too, because we both know this, we are more likely to play the submission game. It took us years to get there, but I think now that we know the ultimate goal, and because we want to grow and we know like the power behind it, we're kind of like, okay, like this is what needs to be done. And so we can be irritated and you can be human and you can have these feelings, but in the end, like, I think that's what, for me at least, and probably for you too, like that's when we were like, this is stupid and it doesn't matter. Not that it doesn't matter, but like let's talk about this, and have better communication as a couple. So we gotta go to dinner. Final
stage then is salvation. That's the stage we were talking about. That's what Danielle's saying. That is the 5 stages. You can learn about those at divorceyourwife.com. Also, on top of this, we have every single 2 weeks happening the Wake Up Warrior Challenge. If you are a man or a woman and looking to find the weapons and the tools that tens of thousands of men and women over the past decade, and specifically now, about 600, 800 every 2 weeks, are stepping these Wake Up Warrior Challenges with us. We'd love to share those tools with you and tips with you, help you have a better marriage, help you have better powerful inside your game, and learn how to have it all across body, being balanced, and business. So check that out. Go to wakeupwarriorchallenge.com. Thanks so much for being here this episode. We're off to dinner, and then I'm off to Costa Rica for 5 days of surfing. And then I'll be back. We'll do this next week's episode, and I'm sure I'll have tons of surf stories that my wife will not be impressed by. My friends, we're out of here. This is Garrett J. White and Danielle signing off for this week's Date Your Wife podcast.